It is truly so rare to come across paid learning communities that have been around for 5 years, let alone a community that has been running and growing for the last decade. And it is with that I will just say this episode is jam-packed with important lessons, noticing the ways that this community creator has evolved and shifted their community and paid attention to what's working and experimented, and especially around the important topic of how to market our communities and how to find new members. We touched so many good topics in this episode. I think my producer's probably going to really, really struggle to come up with a good title for it because there's just so much in here. So I am glowing after this episode, not just because I didn't have the fan running, but because it was such a rich conversation. So enjoy. Welcome to Dear Bree, an advice column for community conundrums, fiascos, and drama. This season of Dear Bree is sponsored by our friends over at Heartbeat. Heartbeat is an all-in-one community platform, and it's the one I chose to host my own community. Your members can finally have events, conversation, content, and even courses in one distraction-free, intimate, customized home. I chose Heartbeat for 3 reasons. First, Heartbeat is unparalleled in their events management features. Events are a core part of my community architecture, and their features make my life so much easier. Second is segmentation. It's super easy to break my community into smaller, more niche subgroups and create a more customized experience for that group in Heartbeat. And finally, their courses. Being able to host my educational materials and learning journey in a community-first platform makes my community that much more valuable and retention that much stickier. I'm an affiliate with Heartbeat, which means when you sign up through my link in the show notes, I get paid a small amount at no extra charge to you. Thank you for supporting my work in that way. And finally, I usually record this podcast from Hawaii Island, so a special thank you to the Kanaka Maoli people on whose land I currently reside. Our writer today falls into the age-old myth, build it and they will come. As you find out in this episode, when you build it, they might be able to come. And as our writer so clearly states, then if you market it effectively, they just might come. And to help us glean some insights about how to market your community effectively, I've invited expert Alli Ball. Alli is the founder and CEO of Food Biz Wiz and the creator of Retail Ready, an online program providing strategic support, curated curriculum, and values-aligned community for producers of packaged products in the food industry. As a former grocery buyer turned wholesale consultant, Alli has helped thousands of emerging brands understand what it takes to get on the shelf and have high sales once you're there. I literally couldn't think of a better person for this episode than someone who has marketed their paid community program for 10 years. That's unheard of to find someone who's been in this space for 10 years. Never mind that in that program, she teaches people how to market their products in the food industry. So Alli, I am so stoked to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me, Bree. I'm so excited to come and talk on the podcast.
Amazing. Well, so Alli, as you know, this is a podcast about community conundrums, fiascos, and drama. Do you have any tea from your own experience, a decade of maybe mistakes and successes that you're willing to share about here today?
Yeah, I feel like I've made so many mistakes along the way, right? There have been little mistakes, there have been big mistakes. And the first one that comes to mind is with our free community. So when we launched our Food Biz Wiz podcast, everyone was telling me that I had to have a free community to go along with the podcast, right? Like, where were people going to talk about the episodes? Where could they dive deeper? Where could our guests connect with our listeners? There was so much, advice on the internet 5-6 years ago that you had to have a free community to go with the podcast. And Bree, to be honest, we had been running our paid community, Retail Ready, for years before this with no problem, with no free community attached to it. But somehow I decided to go with the podcast. So I launched that. And for the first, I don't know, probably 18 months or so, it was fine. It was totally fine. And it was a good place for people to ask questions about the podcast episode and for me to collect email addresses and build my email list that way. And it was okay. And it was on Facebook at this point. And as time wore on, I realized that I had made this huge, tiny mistake with having our free community. The biggest mistake was that it was giving potential retail ready students the wrong impression about what our community looked like inside of our paid program. And the challenge that I was having was that, to be honest, over time, the community kind of fell flat in the free group. It was hard to get people to engage. Facebook was declining in terms of engagement. It just wasn't vibrant. It was exactly the opposite of what was going on inside of our retail ready community. And I realized that it was doing a huge disservice in marketing our paid program. There was some connection there where people were like, well, Alli's promising this beautiful, helpful community inside of Retail Ready, but I just don't see that happening in the free community. It's not happening in the Food Biz Wiz community. So what's it like on the inside? Why would I pay for more of this disengaged community? And it was a hard thing for me to wrap my head around. And it was hard for me to admit that this thing that took a convincing for me to do in the first place was the wrong thing for us, was the wrong marketing tool for us. And then I got nervous, Bree. I'm sure you've heard this before, but I got really nervous about what it would mean to shut it down. And if people would get angry that we were shutting it down, and if people would feel like I was deserting them, or that it, for some reason, like it was a failure. Was I then showing people that it was a failure? So all this drama about shutting it down.
Sounds like a lot of internal drama.
It was internal drama. It was so internal drama. And meanwhile, my team, I've got a couple women on my marketing team, were like, shut it down, Alli, get it out of there. So we shut it down. And sure enough, Bree, you know where this is going. We shut it down and no one cared. Everyone, like, no one cared. I don't know if anyone.
You're like, what free community?
Exactly. Exactly. That's how it felt. Like literally no, like I was afraid we were going to get some angry DMs and things, like literally nothing. If anything, we have found over and over again that when we make a decision at Food Biz Wiz, a thoughtful one, right? A decision with intention. And then we actually bring our community along and tell them why we've made the decision. If anything, it deepens our connection with our community. And we get beautiful messages in response about how our audience so appreciates that we are leading by example and cutting the things that no longer work for our business. And so in a strange like twist of fate, this thing that was really challenging for me to come to terms with and cut ended up being another beautiful example of building a business that works for us here at Food Biz Wiz.
There's so many pieces I want to comment on, but I'm going to start with the most recent, which is setting the example for your community, especially and being willing to prune programs that are not serving the community ultimately. And I think a few key ingredients to that are incorporating the why and vision behind it into your messaging and the change and the shift. And number two, what I love that does for your community members is it helps them know that the community will always evolve and change to meet their needs.
Yes.
Because what can happen so easily in a community is that there's a fine line between entitlement and empowerment, and consistent change and adjustments and optimization and pruning of old programs and introduction of new things keeps people more in the empowered space. I've found the more you solidify an unchangeable structure, it can lead your members to this path of entitlement of this is now a program or a space that like I feel entitled to it never changing or it always being this way. So I love that piece.
Yeah, I really feel you on that, Bree. And at the beginning, I said we've made so many mistakes with our community. And it really reminds me, yeah, at one point, Retail Ready had lifetime access. The first couple of years that we did it, folks had lifetime
I
access
remember that.
to
Yeah.
our program. I say this in the nicest way, but the folks who have been in Retail Ready 7 years, 8 years with lifetime access, who probably paid like $500 for lifetime access to this program almost a decade ago, are the ones, frankly, who are the highest maintenance at this point, a decade later. And I think it really speaks to your point of entitlement, right? That they were promised lifetime access, they were promised a particular thing. And then, sure enough, our 90-day folks who we have in the program right now are so self-sufficient and the best ever. So
totally.
it's
Oh
wild.
my gosh. Oh, we could go on a whole rabbit trail about lifetime.
Yes.
Oh, we're going to have to bring you on for part 2. Somebody just flood me with DMs about wanting Alli on for part 2, because we probably don't have time to talk about lifetime access today, but I feel like we could go off on it.
Yep, we could. TLDR, don't do it.
Oh, more to come. The other piece I want to mention, I think what a lot of people have fallen into that free and paid or some combination of the two. For lack of a better word, I'll call it a trap, because I don't think it's the most effective way to market your community. A free community becomes like a marketing tool for your paid community. And it sounds to me like what happened was you ultimately found yourself managing 2 different communities. Managing one community is hard enough, let alone catering to 2 different sets of people. And anytime that you're using community as a funnel and lead generation to your paid community, it's 2 different people that you are fostering community for. And it's just,
Absolutely.
even just on a practical capacity level, like your own capacity to lead both of those communities well, it takes a very unique, special person who has no boundaries and no life outside of their work to be able to do that.
Yes, absolutely. And to be honest, Bree, I wanted the free community to be less helpful than our paid community. I reserve the very best of me for our paid community, right? They're paying members, they get the best of me. So I purposefully made the free community less than. And then it led to this conundrum where it wasn't a good example of what our community was like.
Yes, because that's exactly it. If your free community is designed to attract people and lead them into a paid community, the nature of community is that it's really full. There's a lot going on. There's probably more available than people even have capacity. If it's going well, it's very full. There's a lot going on. And so there's not really that edge to get people, like they're like, well, there's already more here than I even know what to do with, so why would so it's going well, you cannibalize any sales from a paid experience. If it's not going well, people are like, well, this is a ghost town if this is supposed to be an indicator of what the paid experience is. So it's like you lose or you lose. If it goes well, you lose. And so yeah, I really have to reframe this for my clients, because I think social media is, and that discoverability of communities on social media is where apps were 10 years ago. So I draw this parallel. If you remember 10 years ago, it was like laughable if an app asked you to pay a subscription, right? Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh, sweet summer. Yeah, we don't pay for these things. You just free. And there is that same expectation for community. Like, why would I pay for something? There's a free Facebook group. We've all been conditioned that mindset. Now you look at your phone, and I dare you to go in and see how many subscriptions you've forgotten about that you're signed up for. We all started to realize, oh, I can get the free version that's like pretty shitty and loaded with ads and like kind of clunky, or I can actually just pay a little bit to this like trusted source. I like really value this information and this experience. I'm just going to pay a little bit because I know I don't want to have to wade through all of the stuff to get what I need.
Absolutely.
Communities are in the exact same transition. So people are starting to realize, like, I could join like 12 different somewhat okay free Facebook groups, or I could pay a small amount to know that I'm in the right place with the right people, with this space being intentionally facilitated. And we're seeing a really big shift in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We still use a free community every now and then when we do our 5-day challenges or like the 5-day workshops.
Yes.
We'll do
Okay,
a pop-up
yes. Tell us
community.
more.
Yeah,
Okay,
we'll do so we do something called Wholesale Week. We typically do it twice a year. It's 5 days of free lessons on growing sales of your packaged product business. And we do a pop-up group for it. And it's really wonderful. It's free. Obviously, people come in maybe 10 days or so leading up to it. We've got some warm-up going on. We could then do our 5 days of lessons inside of the pop-up group. And then sure enough, 10 days later, it goes away. It just vanishes. And that's a great way. It's a great way to use a pop-up group. It's a great way to use a free community. And then, of course, showing behind the curtain, that is a launch model that we use for Retail Ready. And then we invite people into our paid program from there. But that's working really well for us. And it means that we don't have to nurture that free community month in and month out outside of Wholesale Week.
Brilliant. I hope everyone's like paying extremely close attention because this is gold. This is exactly what I would recommend in this scenario when people when they really are super emotionally attached to Facebook as a discovery tool, that addition of just a time-bound nature and keeping it a little bit more crunch, one, makes it so much more manageable for you, and two, it just condenses all that energy. So you get, and you probably, I'm guessing, maybe even leverage some of your existing members in your paid community. There's so much you can do within that short container. I love it.
Yeah. And it really allows me to go in and serve that community really well for 5 days. I'm in there. My team and I are in there every single day for those 5 days. We sprinkle on the magic. I will do video responses. We're all in it for 1 week of the year. And then we go back to our paid students. So I don't know, Brie, I've got so much to say on communities and the decision to be on Facebook and all of that sort of stuff. Yeah. I feel like we could talk for hours and hours here.
I know.
Yeah, that was a big mistake for me. It was a small, big mistake for me. And I'm very grateful to be past that stage where we've got a free community on Facebook. And to be clear, our paid community is still on Facebook. That's a whole other conversation, but it is still on Facebook.
Despite my greatest attempts at getting Alice. Just kidding.
Gosh,
I have to give you grief. I have to.
Please do. I mean, I think about this and, Brie, maybe I should have shared this as my mistake, but 10 years ago, Facebook was the place to have community. And Brie, now I'm oh shit, we've got over 3,000 students who have gone through this program who have contributed wise conversations that are now living on Facebook. How the heck do we migrate that encyclopedia of knowledge to another platform? I don't know. I don't know.
Right. I know. And that is so much value created there. Thanks you. Facebook is stoked.
Yes. Oh, for sure. For sure. Who else is stoked though is that founder who is joining Retail Ready, let's say next month. And they can go back and they can search in our Facebook community, FI or sell sheet example or navigating Whole Foods submission or something like that. And they've got years and years worth of past conversations around those topics. And that is so, so valuable to me. So I don't know, Brie, maybe I got to hire you for a few hours of consulting on what the heck we do with this. Because that's a problem that we got to solve another day with that community. I don't know.
It's a complex one when you have such valuable resources already on there. I don't envy your position at all because that is a really tricky one. I think maybe the message is, and maybe this would be a question for you. If you were starting Retail Ready today, do you think you would consider if you were starting from scratch with none of that?
100%. Oh, get it off Facebook. 100%. And the irony is that my team and I are Slack users. We're in Slack all day, every day. We love Slack here at Food Biz Wiz. I use Slack with my one-on-one clients. Everything else is off of Facebook. Our Retail Ready community is the one last hold that Facebook has on us. And so, yeah, if I were to start a community today, I would not do it on Facebook.
The number of pros is just far outweighed by the cons at this point with new technology. To be totally honest, you didn't have that technology available to you 10 years ago.
No.
So you did what you had access to. And honestly, it's working. Like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And
Exactly.
okay, I want to just pause because I really want to get to this letter. And I know that you've gleaned so much insight about how to market this community. You've already given us some great tips. So, are you ready for the letter I've prepared for you today?
I'm ready.
Dear Bree, once upon a time, I built a community for adults with ADHD to get shit done. And it was just me talking to myself. I thought that the movie Field of Dreams was somehow the magical formula to all things. If you build it, they will come. I was wrong. That movie lied to me. It took me over a year to discover if you build it, they will be able to come. And then on top of that, if you market it effectively, they just might come. It wasn't until I met Antonio Pinto, a Vanguard lead, he's a marketing wizard, that I realized not only what effective marketing looks like, but how much effective marketing needs to be done. Lots of great lessons in managing expectations and not giving up on my purpose because immediate results did not come flooding in. I'm happy to report results are happening now, but not in the Field of Dreams way that I tried manifesting in my guided sleep meditations at night. I have 300 members in my online community. I love this writer.
Me too.
Looking back, I wonder what advice you might have given me and my newly minted community. In addition, my current biggest struggle inside the community is learning how to step back from conversations. I feel this obligation to answer every person's struggle and comment on every insight. And because I live inside my community, I am able to see things right away and jump on them. I'm learning to step back and allow members to relate with each other, share insights and struggles with one another, and forge those relationships. And then I chime in because I can't help myself. Any advice? Signed, Eager Beaver in Baltimore.
Bree, this writer is just cracking me up. So whoever submitted this, I just want to pause and say you are such a funny writer, and it's a delight to read this submission. It's so good.
It's the best. Did anything about this letter resonate with you or intrigue you?
Oh, for sure. Bree, I could have written this letter 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I was that person inside. We'll just talk about our paid community for now. We've talked enough about the free one. And I'm assuming, Bree, we don't know in this letter, but I'm assuming that this person has a paid community.
Yeah, let's make the assumption this is a paid community.
So 5 years ago, this could have been me, that I was in Retail Ready all day, every day, first person to respond, proven my expertise, wanting to, because people were paying me like in there all day, every day. So yeah, I'll just say Eager Beaver, I can relate. I have been there, and there is light on the other side of this tunnel for you.
I so feel that. There's this kind of culty nature that like my ego kind of loves about community, which is that like everyone starts to see you are an expert, you're attracting people to your communities, especially education-centric communities where like that is the transformation, is that they're walking through your educational journey. My ego loves it. We're like, yes.
It feels it, right? It feels really good.
I have all the answers. And that will quickly, one, probably burn you out eventually because you are the only source of that value. And two, is that ultimately community building or just like cult building?
Well, yeah. I mean, Bree, I was really thinking about this. And well, one, I just want to acknowledge that Eager Beaver is doing a lot of things correctly. Even when they say, I wonder what advice you might have given me in my newly minted community, where my brain goes, Bree, is we don't need to give you advice on that. You've already got it. You've already said that you've shifted away from this, if I build it, they will come mindset. I love that you use the Field of Dreams example. We actually use that inside of Retail Ready as well. When we talk about marketing of packaged products, same line, the anti-Field of Dreams advice. So you're already there, Eager Beaver, right? You've switched your mindset there, and you have realized that it takes a heck of a lot of consistent marketing to get people into your community. So good job realizing that and implementing that. But with the struggle here on stepping back in the conversations, Bree, the first thing that I thought about is that if you are the leader of your community and you are the first person to respond to every post, first person to put a comment in there, to give advice, that's a dictatorship. That's not actually a community. You are the person who holds 99% of the power in that community. And it's actually really unfair for the members in the community. Even if this person isn't fully recognizing how much power they hold, or they're like, oh, I'm creating an inclusive space where other people can chime in. Still being the leader of that community, you do hold power. And people do see you as, generally speaking, as the most educated person on that particular subject inside of your community. And so I think here, as Eager Beaver responds to every single thing first, they're not giving other members of the community the opportunity to step up as leaders or step up as thought leaders or experts or valuable contributors to the community, because you're always going first, right? That's dangerous. It's actually to be extreme here, it's anti-community.
Yeah.
It's top-down leadership.
So good. Yep. It's not creating any of the space. It reminds me of in a classroom setting when the teacher is like, does anyone have any questions? Okay, so moving on.
Yeah.
Zero pause. And even if I had a question or an insight or something to share, so I always on Zoom calls, like my number one reminder to myself is like, embrace the silence after you ask a question.
Yeah. And here too, Bree, if this person is answering the questions first, or like in the top few comments, it subtly sets the tone. That's the right answer, or that's the right direction to go in. And it might not be, right? I am sure that Eager Beaver is not the end all be all in every single situation. They aren't saying that they are, but we can't help but think the leader of the community has last say. And so I actually am curious if they're shutting down conversation and shutting down people feeling comfortable giving opinions, especially if they are in disagreement with Eager Beaver's opinions here, because the expert has spoken. There's so much that I want for Eager Beaver here. I want them to have a community where other people get to be thought leaders.
Yeah. Do you have any practical tactics? Because what if there's a part of the fear here for them where they're like, I can sense this from my own experience, and maybe it's in this letter too where I'm just projecting. You're like, well, if I don't kick off the comments and provide, let's say, like a standard or an example of how I want people to comment on each other's posts, what if no one comments? What if people don't start interacting? Do you have any advice for that situation if that's the fear?
Totally. Okay. So it's all about setting expectations in the group. And where my brain goes first is, what are the expectations that you have set for new members and existing members in the community? What are the expectations about how quickly you, the leader, are responding? Are you responding to every single post? Or, for example, what we do in Retail Ready is I actually only give direct responses to posts that I'm tagged in at this point. So if someone is posting and they're just like, can anyone give me feedback on my shelf talker? Can anyone give me feedback on my new packaging design? I actually don't give feedback. But if they tag, hey, at Alli Ball, can you give feedback on my shelf talker? Sure, happy to give feedback. So, and we set those expectations from the beginning that if you want my eyes, you tag me. If you want the community's eyes, no need to tag me. If you want someone on the team at Food Biz Wiz, we've got other team members in there who provide other types of expertise. If you want Charlie's eyes, you tag Charlie. If you want Miranda, you tag Miranda. So setting those expectations from the beginning about how you get direct feedback from whomever in the beginning is really important. That's part of the onboarding. And so in terms of getting that community to start engaging, it's all about setting expectations from the beginning and making some decisions about when you respond to what types of posts. So it could be that tagging thing. That's just one example. But another thing that you could do, and what we've implemented inside of Retail Ready, there are a couple different things. One, at the beginning, I explained how Retail Ready is still in Facebook, but my team and I operate in Slack. So what we've done, and we have a little snafu that we've got to figure out at this point with the changing API with Facebook. But historically, what we've done is we send all new Facebook posts from students to a Slack channel, a dedicated Slack channel, where then we're time stamping them. Different team members on my team are assigned to them. We track how long it takes us to respond and the response rate, and if other community members are chiming in. And that way it doesn't get like lost in this Facebook abyss, but we actually have a chronological log of the student questions. And we've got a whole emoji system on whether or not they're pending or complete. And so, Eager Beaver, I'm curious for you, what sort of systems can you put in place where you're not just in there clicking refresh on your community, but are there times of the day, days of the week, boundaries here that you can put in place where you're like, okay, I am in that community Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 3 to 4 p.m. Or I'm in there Monday through Saturday from 9 to noon, like whatever it is, right? There's no judgment about what those days or hours are, but setting guidelines for yourself and then having systems in place where you're tracking your responses can be really helpful, especially as things scale here. Eager Beaver's got 300 members. In my mind, like that's pretty manageable, but what happens when it gets to 3,000? What happens when it gets to 10,000, right? That's when you start really feeling that anxiety that comes with the constant refreshing of the comments.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I feel like you just gave permission to take the weight off of the shoulders. I haven't even thought about that for my own community, but there's just, as a community manager or someone who's ever like responding and active in a community, I don't know if y'all feel this, but I feel just like a general constant sense of guilt that I'm not more involved.
I used to for sure.
Yeah. And okay.
100%. I think the guilt comes up a lot when people are paying us because they're paying for our expertise. We have taken their money and now we have to provide something in return. But I say this in the nicest way, but we only have to give them whatever we've promised. So maybe we promise responses Monday, Wednesday, Fridays between 9 and 10 a.m. And then that's great. And again, it just has to be super clear, setting expectations and super clear in the onboarding, right, of that new paid member. Maybe that's, if it's a Facebook group, it's in your rules in Facebook. It's in the onboarding email that they get. We use Kajabi for our curriculum platform. We've got a whole module inside the onboarding in Kajabi about how to navigate the Facebook group and what expectations are in terms of tagging, response time, engaging on other people's posts, how to ask for advice in a way that is helpful, that actually gets other people to respond to your posts, right? There's a whole bunch of expectation setting that you can do that just makes it clear about what they can expect from you as the community leader. And that, for me, that really took the guilt off once I was like, oh, I just need to tell them what they're going to get. And then we have an equal exchange here, and there's no misaligned expectations there.
This podcast is sponsored by Ember Consulting, where I'm the founder and head community creator. At Ember, we help people who are familiar with running their business on content, coaching, or consulting become community powered. As you hear in this podcast, creating a community is really tough, and managing it can be even harder. So don't do it alone. Whether you're looking to launch a new community or pivot your strategy, our one-on-one consulting helps you skip the learning curve and do it right the first time. And when you're ready to belong to a space just for community creators learning, testing, and growing their communities together, check out the Ember community. Now, back to the episode. Yep. Oh, that's so good. I could anticipate for our listeners who use community to expand on their group coaching offering.
Yeah.
If the community is like the place where maybe you market it, like have more access to me because it's in this community environment. And I think for anyone doing that, I hope you hear this and take it to heart, because it brings us back to what you were saying about the free community too. And that if you are forever and always available, and that's the expectation, that's the promise to your members, like you will get a response within 1 or 2 hours, like wherever you are, whenever you are. Like that's not setting you up to present your best work. So almost working backwards from what are the boundaries if the goal here is that I serve my community members with the best possible like advice, most thoughtful responses, what boundaries do I need to put in place so that I can realistically deliver that? And maybe it's I respond Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or I respond during this hour, and that's what you can expect.
Yeah, absolutely. And for us, so just to be clear on what we say is they have access to me and my team, me and the Food Biz Wiz team, Monday through Friday in our Facebook group during West Coast business hours. That is the only place that we answer questions around the curriculum. I don't answer questions by email, by DM, like none of that. And students do email me with questions and stuff. And I just say, got a canned response. Please go post it in the Facebook group. Here's the link. So Monday through Friday, West Coast business hours. And we respond to all questions within 48 hours if we are tagged in them. If we're not tagged, then yeah, sure, we'll chime in if it's something that we can easily respond to, but there isn't that pressure to chime in unless we are literally tagged. And then, of course, I love the 48 hours, 48 business hours, and often it's within a couple hours. It's often faster than that, but we set really generous expectations and then we go above and beyond.
I love it. Such good advice.
There's also something here that we haven't touched on, but I just want to address that going back to this community, they say that they've built a community for adults with ADHD to get shit done. And it seems like this reader knows that people have different learning styles. They have different response styles. People can take different amounts of times and ways of processing information. And I'm just curious here, Bree, what if the best thing for this community wasn't this person responding within 10 minutes for each post? What if the spaciousness actually allowed people with all different learning styles to take part in this community in a different way?
That's such a good insight. Yes.
So going back to the promise that this person has made for their community and really making sure, like you were saying at the beginning, Bree, or a few minutes ago, making sure that they are leading by example in the way they want their community members to start showing up as well. One of the things that we're really clear on in our Retail Ready community is that if you're hanging out in the community all day long, you're not actually working on your business. And yeah, I love it when people are in the community, but we have Retail Ready students who never engage in the community. They do the curriculum at their own pace. Maybe they'll pop in. We do twice a month live group coaching calls. Maybe they'll pop into a live call, but they are not hanging out in the community. And one of the things that's so important for us is tying it back to, like you said, Bree, tying it back to who we want our students to be in their businesses. And those are people who are looking at bigger picture strategy. They're working on their business instead of being in the weeds in their business. And one of the ways that we model that is by not hanging out on Facebook all day long, right? So I think there's big opportunity for Eager Beaver here to model that for their community as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. And I want to just set the context for your community very briefly on that point, because so I talk about the 4 different types of communities. And on the paid side, we have education-centric communities, and then we have connection-centric communities. Mm. And I would put your community like hands down, education-centric, paid. I call that a transformative community. There is a transformation that is happening for your members. There are so many strengths. I have a very sweet spot for transformative communities. And part of what you're saying is that in our dedication to your education and to your transformation, yes, the community is here to serve that transformation, but we're also aware that it could distract from that and just become this place where we spin together if we're not all really deliberately journeying together.
100%. And my goal with our Retail Ready community is that as folks move through our curriculum and become more confident, competent CEOs of their businesses, they actually outgrow our community. And that's a wonderful thing for me. I want them to get to the place where the retail ready community feels like a waste of time for them. That means that we've done something really powerful. We have facilitated that transformation in their business. Absolutely.
Yeah, that just nail in the coffin. That's like the picture perfect transformation, because it's inevitably, if once you undergo that transformation, it does come to an end, and there is a purpose that's served. Yep.
Yeah, and there is like something there that is sometimes a bummer for me, right? Because I'm like, oh, that person has so much wisdom in building their business now, right? Because maybe they've built it to 7 figures, or they've sold their business, or they've hit some huge milestone that would be really valuable to younger founders. That person who's managing a multi 7-figure business at this point is not hanging out in the Facebook group all day long. So I get it. And I love it when people graduate from our retail ready community.
Amazing. Okay, I want to shift us back to, because even though Eager Beaver set the stage for this like field of dreams moment, they're like, okay, I've come out the other side. I know that I need to market it. For our listeners who are like, that's me, I'm still like not sure. So tell us more about how in the world did you market this amazing community for 10 years?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So at this point, we do all organic marketing. We don't run any paid ads. There were a few years that we did a big paid push, and that worked really well for us until it didn't. So I would say we leverage 2 things. I guess 3 things, Brie. Email marketing. I'm a huge advocate for email marketing. From day one, I built my email list, and every time speaking event, podcast guest, social media, just like trying to get people on my newsletter. Number 1 since day 1. So email marketing, we leverage. And at this point, I email my list between 1 and 2 times a week. And that might seem like a lot, but I sit down, I do my bulk emails. We plan out for about 6 weeks at a time of email content and just schedule it and crank it out. Also, 10 years in, we do a lot of repurpose. That's a whole other thing, but email marketing is really huge for us. Second, social media. Instagram is the platform that we spend most of our time on, but that's just because that's where our audience is. If your audience is on LinkedIn, go on LinkedIn. If your audience is on TikTok, go to TikTok. Like, I feel very strongly about choosing a platform and doing it really well. So we do Instagram really well, and that's where we hang out with people. If you DM me, you get me. Like, I'm there in the DMs a lot. I have one other woman on my team helps with the DMs, but we're real people over there in the DMs. So a lot of community building on that platform. So email, social. And then for a long time, Brie, too, we had a podcast, and that was really powerful for marketing. It wasn't great for new lead generation. We weren't constantly getting new leads from the podcast, but it was a valuable way to nurture our existing leads. Leads would come from other places, and then they would be nurtured by the podcast. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes sense. Oh, it's resonating. Oh my God, you're in my mind. This is so good. I teach my members in my community, like, when you are marketing your community, especially if you're just starting out, find the one social platform that you will not want to claw your eyes out if you have to be on every business day of the week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like Instagram. It's fun. So I hang out there.
Find the one that you enjoy, your people are on. Obviously, those 2 need to overlap. And focus your energy on like really crushing it on that one platform. As someone, for me, it's LinkedIn. And I'll tell you, as someone, I've leveraged Instagram for a different business, for my camper van rental business, by the way.
Yes.
For that, the strategy is just so different between Instagram and LinkedIn. And so it truly, again, it's bringing us back to this, like, I'm building 2 different audiences, and it's 2 entirely different jobs to build an audience on Instagram and one on LinkedIn. And so what I hear you saying is start with the one that has the least friction, where the most people are on it, and pour your effort into that to find new members.
Yeah, absolutely. And if your listeners are like, well, Alli, like, I see you posting on LinkedIn. Yeah, we dabble there. We repurpose content there. But primarily we hang out. We build everything for Instagram and then we'll repurpose it a bit on LinkedIn, which is going okay. It's not great. I would be happy to let that go, shut it down entirely, knowing that our Instagram really is the platform for us.
Yeah. And knowing that you have this really solid foundation with your email marketing list.
Yeah. Huge.
That's really
huge. And it goes both ways, right? So what we'll do is we have our content calendar for Instagram where I don't know what it is at this point. Let's just say 4 times a month, we invite people onto the newsletter. So every week I'll make a story before the newsletter goes out saying, in Monday's newsletter, here's what I'm talking about. If you want to hear the full story, click here, get on our newsletter. And then vice versa, inside of our newsletter, I'll say, hey, I'm going to do an Instagram live next week. Click here, come follow us, ask your questions, blah, blah, blah. So if your listeners could see me right now, I'm making this motion where the two parts are weaving together with our organic social and email content.
Yeah. And then with your like super successful podcast, congratulations on 250 episodes. That's
Thank you.
Such an accomplishment. My podcasting goals to derive that much value and nurturing through this podcast.
You're doing it. And podcasting is no joke. So I thought about the podcast as, what is my body? This sounds so dramatic. What is my body of work that can live on, beyond me? So maybe it could have been a podcast. It could have been a Substack. It could have been a book. It could have been, I don't know, a physical product, something. And I landed on podcasts because years ago, there wasn't really a CPG podcast that was working in, like, for the audience that I was targeting, early stage packaged food and beverage founders. But that felt important to me, to have some sort of nurturing thing that people could binge and that would really build trust and connection with people who found me through social or on my email list.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's great to hear. So, question for you, because it sounds like you have, after 10 years, quite the robust, like, kind of drip, I would call it like a drip nurturing system where you have mechanisms in place to attract new eyeballs. It's worked into your content strategy. Also within your content strategy are mechanisms to move people further along in the funnel, to get on the email list, to like then attend the live, to then binge a couple episodes, and then smack, join Retail Ready. So you've got that whole, let's call it the drip sprinkler system.
Yes.
In motion. And then it also sounds like you host these kind of like floodgate moments where you'll bring a lot of people in, or you'll have a really big push at different strategic times. Can you talk a little bit more about those too?
Absolutely. Okay. So Retail Ready, in full disclosure, you can join any day of the year. There are a couple days of the year that we, like right after a big launch, we'll be like, whew, we got to like close the doors for a little bit. But by and large, we have an evergreen sales system where people watch an on-demand webinar and they're invited into Retail Ready. You can do that pretty much any day of the year. You can land on our website. You can go down that funnel. You're invited in. We have a whole back-end system where if they don't purchase within the week of watching the webinar, they go down a nurture funnel and they're re-invited later on. Okay, so we've got that evergreen sales system running in the background.
Oh, wait. Okay, so sorry, just to make sure I understand.
Yeah.
It's a webinar that they pay for. Do they pay for the webinar?
It's free.
Free webinar that like leads people into the paid, and then they pay for Retail Ready.
Exactly. So free webinar, we call it the wholesale success system. I feel very strongly that it's a really value-packed webinar, right? Even if someone decides not to join us in Retail Ready, that's fine. They've still gotten value and legit learning from that webinar. I'm also of the mind that there's no smoke and mirrors here. People know it's on demand. They know it's recorded. There's no like fake live webinar, any sort of that's so pervasive in the online space. There's none of that going on over here. So that's one option to enroll in Retail Ready. They go down that evergreen webinar funnel 24/7. You can do that. You could sign up at 3 a.m. tomorrow if you want to. However, because Retail Ready is available all the time, anybody can join. There sometimes isn't urgency to join, right? And unless you give people like a real deadline, and we don't do fake deadlines around here. So there has to be, in my mind, there has to be some seasonal pushes where we invite people in with maybe some extra bonuses or some like extended access in our program or a free like bonus call with me or something that takes those folks who are sitting on the fence and gets them to make a decision, whether yes or no, but they actually make a decision about whether or not they are joining us inside of Retail Ready. So that for us, Bree, is a live launch model into Retail Ready that we typically like to do 3 times a year or so. So we have a couple different versions of it. The wholesale week, like I was talking about earlier, that 5-day push is a big one. We typically do that twice a year. And then we'll also do seasonal things as well. So for example, in September this year, we have our 4th quarter focus live workshop. And it's where people are coming in. We talk about 4th quarter in packaged product industry, that rhythm of retail, what the heck we're doing in the 4th quarter with an invite to join us inside of Retail Ready. In the spring, we usually do something about category reviews and getting people into that spring mindset, trade show season, things like that. So there are these live launches that are either 5 days or just like a single day that will layer in just to get those people who are on the fence, get them to make a decision about Retail Ready. It's really easy for our audience, especially if you can join anytime, right? It's really easy to just keep delaying the decision.
I love it. It's the difference between, there are some communities that are more like cohort based, and those can be really effective because you give people a reason. They have to join by this date. And so that can be a really powerful marketing tool. Then there's like membership communities that are ongoing, evergreen. And actually, we talked about this a lot in episode 1 with Marie Schott. So our listeners can go back and listen to that one. We talk about like the pros and cons of those 2 models. And what I'm hearing you say is, hey, I hear that like membership is working really well for you. You seem like a systems person and you've got some really amazing systems in place. And in the same breath, like if you're going to do a membership model, if you're going to do evergreen joining system, you have to give them a reason to join today, or at least by the end of the month.
Yes, exactly. And Bree, to be fully honest, we used to have it as a cohort model. Well, it was originally a 6-week program and it was incredible. People came in, they got results. It was incredible. And then they left. And I taught that, I don't know, about 6 times a year or so. And this is when I still had a lot of one-on-one clients. And I was still working with retailers across the US. So I still had like my retail clients as well. But my passion was in the producer side of things. And Bree, like pretty soon what was happening was I was really building a reputation with Retail Ready. And folks would come to me and they're like, I want to take Retail Ready. And I would be like, oh, sorry, we're in week 3 of this cohort. Get on the wait list. We'll be back sometime later in the year. And so I was literally turning away people when they needed me most. And when they had their wallets open, they were ready to pay me. And so just like model wise, I was like, okay, if I really want to scale this company, if I want to have a bigger impact in this industry, I've got to turn it into a self-paced program with live support sprinkled on top. So there's been a couple different iterations of it. I've alluded to a few of them. It's been a decade. So again, if anybody's listening, know that like this has been years of trial and error and figuring out what works for us. But what we are running now, that we've been running for about 18 months or so, is Retail Ready is a 90-day program. So you have to commit to 90 days. And then once you hit 90 days, it turns into a month-to-month membership. So you keep the same exact price because you get the same exact access. Nothing changes about your access. So you keep your monthly price for as long as you want. 1 more month, 6 more months, 2 more years, whatever you want to do inside of Retail Ready. But it's that 90-day commitment and then turns into the membership after that.
Oh, I love that combination of like the 2 pieces there where you have a little bit of a time bound nature where it's the nice expectation. Mentally, it's nice to just know, okay, I can do 90 days. That's the other big hurdle for memberships is like not having an end time in mind can be just psychologically tough to commit to. I'm just going to exist in this space forever and ever. And I love that you've is designed into the experience. Like one, this first kind of milestone of 90 days. And there's probably a check-in at that point of, hey, did you get everything you need? If so, like we can send you on your way. Probably there's like a lot of development of the skills that needs to take place, which is where they go right into the ongoing community.
Yeah, exactly. And the way we were really clear in the marketing of it is the first 90 days is all about building the systems to succeed in retail. And then beyond 90 days, that's the implementation. So either folks want our support with the implementation or not. Some people are totally complete and ready to fly on their own, right? And that's great. But for other people, they want that. They want the community. People stay in it for the community. They want the support from us. So yeah, it's been really interesting to think about different models and layering in the live launches with the evergreen. And that really was something that evergreen model really came out of the desire to scale retail ready and the desire to run paid ads. And so we were like, oh, if we really want, unquote, like 24/7 sales, we need to develop a system that allows for people to join 24/7 and throw some money into paid ads behind it.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my gosh. I feel like I could just literally talk to you all day about the iterations because I feel like you've probably seen your community evolve so much, seen also just like how people, like people's perceptions of the community and the project and what it and the value of it and how they interact with it has probably changed so dramatically over the last 10 years too.
Oh boy.
Like,
yeah.
Oh, I could pick your brain for so long. So I'm going to just like gracefully hold myself back and pause here and say, Alli, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and shedding some light on this really tough work at the intersection of community and business. It's not like you are like a trailblazer in the space. And so it's such a privilege to glean those insights and make the community leaders of today feel a little less alone in this important work. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much for sharing some space with me on this episode. Please like and review wherever you find your podcasts. To submit your own community conundrum, fiasco, or other drama, go to the link in the show notes. Aloha and catch you next time.